Ielts Listening, version 53997. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Part 1 on page 2 of your question booklet. Part 1. You will hear a woman talking to a builder who is going to do some building work at her house. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
Morning, thanks for coming round. I'm Sally.
Morning. So just before we get started, I'll just make a few notes. So, we're at 15 Hill Street.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, great. And then I need to write down your contact information, just for the office, you know. So, first, what's your surname, please, Sally?
It's Keyworth. I'll spell that. Keyworth.
And your phone number, I've got that somewhere. Yes, 027 584 6613.
That's right.
Okay, Sally, so what building work would you like to have done?
Well, let's go into the kitchen first. So, you see, it's quite dark in here. We've tried having a few lights fitted, but it hasn't really made any difference. So, what we've decided is the window is too small. We'd like a larger one.
That shouldn't be a problem. And is there anything else you'd like done in the kitchen?
Well, at this time of year, I shouldn't complain really, but I wish it wasn't so hot in here. Is there anything you can do about that?
Air conditioning?
It's too expensive.
How about a fan then?
Yes, that would be perfect.
Righto. And what's next, Sally?
Well, if we walk through into the bathroom, the thing is, when my father's staying, he can't use the bath. So I thought here, on the back wall, I'd like you to fit a shower. Is that possible?
Shouldn't be too hard. I'll get you some brochures because there are a few ways of doing that.
Thanks.
Now, those tiles on the wall look new, so do you want to keep those?
Yes, the tiles are new, but actually my husband doesn't like them. We want to change to those very small ones, but do I have to choose a colour now?
You can do that later. I'll get some charts for you to look at.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
Now the last thing, let's walk outside. I need to show you some things outside the house.
Righto. Oh, nice garden. And the fence looks in good condition.
Yes, it's new, but the thing is the gate. It's too low. You have to bend down to open it. We need something that's higher.
Right, I'll see to that.
Then the other thing is the garage here. We had a break-in, actually.
Yeah, I can see. The door should be fine, but the lock. I'll replace that, shall I?
Yes, thanks. Then also, if you step back here and look up on the roof, you can see that it's damaged.
Did that happen in the storm a couple of weeks ago?
Yes, that's right.
I'll get up there and take a look at that then. That might be quite a big job, but I'll get back to you once I've had a look.
OK.
I can see that your rain gutter is broken as well.
Can you fix that?
Well, I'll need to replace it, maybe with a steel one. It'd be stronger.
No, plastic will be fine, thanks. It's cheaper.
OK.
And that's everything, I think. Is there any other information you need? What about a start date?
Well, I'm completely booked all April, and I've got a job on May the 5th. That'll be a few days, so let's say May the 8th.
OK.
Now, what about a key in case you're out?
We have a security code. I'll give you that. It's a mix of letters and numbers. The code is AG4176.
Got that. OK, we'll organise some...
That is the end of Part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 1. Part 2. You will hear a camp director giving information about the Pioneer Park and Resort. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Hello, I'm Daniel. Thank you for choosing Pioneer Park and Resort. In this talk, I'll be giving you a few tips for your camping trip, and we'll also introduce you to the exhibits in our themed vacation spot. Let's start with some important tips for planning your camping trip. We have some basic camping supplies in our cabins, but it's a good idea to bring extra gear you may want to use. Yard sales and discount stores are good places to buy pots and pans for cooking, towels, and even clothing. Buy the best tents you can afford, and high-quality sleeping gear and backpacks, but the rest of your supplies can be the bargain stuff. You don't need to spend much on other supplies. Now, we're open all year, so in some months it can get very cold and even rainy. To stay warm at those times, you should avoid cotton clothes. These can chill you quickly when wet. And wear many items of clothing so you can take things off as the day gets warmer. One basic rule is if you need to build a campfire to stay warm, you are probably too cold. And here's some important advice about water. In most of our campgrounds, you can get water out of a tap, just like you would at home. But 2 of our campgrounds only offer dry camping. This means there are no public facilities for providing water. Some people think it's a good idea to use filters or tablets to clean the water from the creek or river. But not me. I think it's best to simply purchase bottled water in our supply store. The important thing is never to drink directly from any natural water source. That is, without treating the water first. While taking care of your own needs, you also need to keep the area in good condition. When hiking, stay on the main, official trails. This keeps damage to vegetation in one place. You should also set up your tent in a different spot every day. This is to keep from flattening out the ground and preventing a single spot from getting enough light and air. I'll conclude this part of my talk with some important points about leaving the campground. It's very important that you do not leave trash around your camping area. To get rid of your large bags of garbage, we have one convenient waste bin which you'll find right next to our main gate. This way, you can simply dispose of your trash on your way out of the park. Please check your area thoroughly before you leave the campground.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Now, I'll move on to talk about the Pioneer Theme Park, located an easy walk from all campgrounds. There are several exhibits to choose from. In the center of things, you'll find Eagle Trading Post, our Native American station. This is where you can learn to make traditional crafts. There is a chance to take part in hollowing out a tree to construct a simple canoe or sailing vessel. This was a traditional way used in the past. Another station is the Bike Barn. Here you can rent bicycles for a small fee and also pick up a bag of chips and a drink at the counter. Many of you will love fishing at Long Trail Lake, where you can purchase fishing equipment. This is also the place to meet for an entertaining walk with one of our guides, who are trained to teach you all about our local plants and wildlife. After dinner, you'll want to visit Pioneer Hall, where you're sure to enjoy our famous musical performance about the Old West, starring our own very gifted local actors. Finally, there's Crockett's Campfire, featuring a master storyteller. While sitting under the stars, you'll hear tales that teach you all about the Old West. There will also be activities to help you learn more about your fellow campers, and we hope you'll keep in touch long after you leave here. This has been just some of what there is to know about Pioneer Town. I'll look forward to seeing you there.
That is the end of Part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 2.
Part 3. You will hear a sociology student called John discussing his research project about the use of public services with his tutor. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Hello, John. Come in and sit down. You're here to discuss your research project, are you?
Yes, I've more or less decided what to do, but I'd like your opinion.
Fine. You've chosen a topic.
Yes, I want to look at how people use public services in their local area. Things like parks and swimming pools.
Right. Well, the kind of information you'll get is very useful for town planning, of course. Do you have a special interest in public services?
Not really. It's just that I found a report in the college library about an investigation that was done 10 years ago, and I thought it'd be interesting to do a parallel one.
10 years is a relatively short space of time. What do you expect to find? Do you think things will be more or less the same as before?
I think there'll be some differences. For example, I think the number of people going to the library will have decreased. And I'd guess that older people are using the sports centre more often than they used to.
Fine. So those are your hypotheses. Now, what sort of data are you going to use?
I was thinking of using official records from the management or the local council and analysing them. They should be easy to obtain. I don't think that sort of information would be confidential.
Yes, you're probably right. There might not be as much information as you'd like, but it'd certainly be the easiest kind of data to work with. But have you considered using a questionnaire as well?
It's okay to get data from more than one source.
Absolutely. It's a bonus. You've already done the module on questionnaire design, haven't you? And it'll be good to get experience, because next year you'll have to do something similar for your final dissertation, on a bigger scale.
Okay.
And what are the variables you'll be looking at? Are you going to look at people's level of education? Whether they have a degree, for example?
I hadn't planned to. Do you think I should?
Well, you might see some interesting patterns.
Okay. And that'll tie in nicely with my plans to analyse the kind of work people do.
What about the size of your sample? Have you got any thoughts on the number of questionnaires you might send out?
The previous study surveyed 120 people. I don't think I can really analyse more than 50 working by myself, so I should probably distribute about 80 questionnaires altogether to allow for wastage. Do you think that's enough?
Definitely. I know that your project guidelines recommend a minimum of 100, but that's an ideal number, and you're working by yourself. And anyway, this assignment is mainly about giving you practice in research methods.
Right.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
And think of ways you can encourage people to actually complete the questionnaire. For example, to make sure that your questions make sense, you should try them out beforehand.
Okay, that's no problem. My friends will help.
Good. Sometimes you get unpredicted responses and you have to rephrase a question.
And I know that you usually get a better return if you deliver questionnaires in person, but there'll be too many. But I could enclose a stamped envelope for the return post. It's a bit expensive, but I think it'd be worth it.
Yes, good. Some people say that another way of increasing returns is to make the questionnaires anonymous, but usually people put their names on anyway, so I don't think that would make much difference.
Okay. And can you give me a bit more advice about the questionnaire? Would it be a good idea to have a short paragraph at the top explaining what I'm doing and why?
Definitely. And don't forget, you'll need to get a bit of information about your subjects, what age group they're in, and perhaps how long they've lived in the area. So you'll need questions for that.
Yes. I suppose that'll mean it takes a bit longer to complete, but Should I give them my phone number in case there's anything they're not sure about?
I wouldn't if I were you, no.
OK. And do I have to use open-ended questions as well as closed questions? I know the books say it's better to have a mixture.
Well, it depends. In this case, I'd stick to closed questions. The results will be much more manageable like that.
If I draft some questions tomorrow, would it be OK to bring them to...
That is the end of Part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 3.
Part 4. You will hear a lecturer giving a talk on how science may change in the future. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
In this final lecture of our course on the history of science, I would like to look to the future and tell you about some predictions that have been made about scientific developments. The content for my talk is based on some research in which 30 scientific leaders were invited to comment on the developments that they envisage as likely to come about in their own discipline within 50 years. After summarizing some of their most interesting contributions for you, I'll ask you to give me your opinions as to the likelihood of these changes occurring within this timescale. You may also like to suggest some other likely changes yourselves. So first, let's start with computer science, as this is clearly an area where there are bound to be dramatic developments, and, even more significantly perhaps, these developments are likely to impact on every other field of learning. The invention of computers represents an enormous leap forward in the field of human endeavor. It could indeed be considered as being as momentous a development as when our predecessors in caves first learnt to make fire and use it for all sorts of purposes. In the future, the computational revolution is certain to be generally recognized as a transformation as significant as, say, the Industrial Revolution. The computer scientists in the study I referred to felt that, in the coming decades, lives will be significantly enhanced by automated reasoning systems of different types. There was considerable agreement that people will increasingly perceive these computer systems as intelligent. Although many of these will be deployed behind the scenes, others will be in the foreground, serving in an elegant, often collaborative manner to help people do their jobs, to learn and teach, to reflect and remember, to plan and decide. Without going into further detail about this at this point, let's turn to what predictions psychologists had to make. Their key point was that psychological research would inevitably become increasingly varied. It would move into such areas as behavioral economics and social neuroscience. There is likely to be further expansion into domains with more practical relevance, as increasing numbers of women become research scientists, so areas such as health, environment, family, and social identity will receive more attention. At the same time as they broaden their horizons, psychologists will also intensify their search to discover what exactly determines how we act. They will be assisted in this by imaging devices that will be inserted into the brain and provide a great deal of information about how it behaves. There should be some fascinating discoveries coming to light very soon. Another field that is currently undergoing enormous changes is that of genetics. It is not new to suggest that average life expectancy is likely to continue rising in most countries. However, today geneticists emphasize that it is vital that the increasing number of the elderly in society must take quality of life into account. So, how will genetics help this to happen? To start with, they hope to develop technologies that can sequence each person's genome extremely cheaply. This information about our DNA enables healthcare providers to predict our likelihood of suffering from any particular disease. From there on, it is a matter of weighing up various factors with a view to determining what can be done to minimize each individual's level of risk. With such information in hand, new treatments will be developed, and the current one-size-fits-all approach to healthcare will give way to a more personal approach. The final subject area that I wish to bring to your attention is that of zoology. Once again, computers and technology have a key role to play here. Experts comment specifically on the importance of satellites for future developments in this field. These enable people to explore the world from their homes, offices, and schools. It is now possible, for instance, to go online and see for yourself the abundant wildlife in one part of East Africa, and in the surrounding region, the harm people have done by destroying the forests, all supposedly in the name of development. Zoologists believe the breakthrough that lies ahead is how people act on such information as this. They hope that we will learn to connect our minds to our hearts and apply this knowledge to help protect our planet. They express a clear hope that a greater understanding of the consequences of human short-sightedness will make people anxious to rectify what we can before it is too late.
That is the end of Part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 4.
That is the end of the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet. You have 2 minutes left. You have 1 minute left. Please stop writing and wait for your question booklet to be collected.